She told a passerby she'd already called for help, but no call was ever made. On a winter road that swallows sound, a car sits steaming in the dark. Airbags blown, driver's door shut, no footprints leading away. So where did Maura Murray go? A planned escape? Or a crime that hid itself in plain sight? Stay with me, because the details you're about to hear don't just raise questions, they change the timeline. This is Audioman Dark Stories, where we walk the thin line between fact and folklore and never blink when the trail goes cold. Tonight, the disappearance of Maura Murray, 21 years old, a nursing student with discipline forged on the track, sharpened at West Point, and redirected to UMass Amherst. In the days before she vanished, there were odd searches, packed boxes, and a quiet storm brewing under the surface. Calls, emails, a car crash, and a second car crash that would become legend. We'll rebuild the last 48 hours, minute by minute. We'll follow the Saturn down Route 112 to that sharp bend where the world narrows and choices echo. We'll listen for the call that never happened. We'll weigh the contradictions. A calm refusal of help in a dead zone with no service. A locked car, airbags out, red stains like wine, and a timeline that fractures under pressure. Maura Murray was born on May 4th, 1982, in Brockton, Massachusetts. She was the fourth child of Frederick Fred and Lori Murray. She grew up in a close-knit Irish Catholic household with an older brother, Fred, two older sisters, Kathleen and Julie, and a younger half-brother, Kurt. But her childhood was not without hardship. When Maura was just 6 years old, her parents divorced. A fracture in the family that left her primarily in the care of her mother. Even at a young age, those who knew her described her as quiet, intelligent, and determined, with a strength of character that seemed far beyond her years. Maura went on to graduate from Whitman-Hanson Regional High School in Hanson, Massachusetts, where she excelled both academically and athletically. She was a standout on the school's track team, a runner with remarkable discipline and endurance. Her talent and drive earned her a place at the prestigious United States Military Academy at West Point, New York, where she began studying chemical engineering. For 3 semesters, she pushed herself through the rigors of military life. But deep down, she knew something was off. West Point wasn't where she belonged. So, in a decision that surprised some but felt natural to her, Maura transferred to the University of Massachusetts Amherst. There, she redirected her ambition and resilience into nursing, a path that spoke more to her compassion, her discipline, and perhaps her desire for a different future. Shortly after midnight on Monday, February 9th, Maura Murray sat at her personal computer. She pulled up MapQuest and searched for directions. Not to campus, not to anywhere she'd mentioned to friends, but to the Berkshires and Burlington, Vermont. It was the first sign that something unusual was in motion. The first reported contact Murray had with anyone that day came at 1 p.m. She emailed her boyfriend, "I love you more, stud. I got your messages, but honestly, I didn't feel like talking too much to anyone. I promised to call today, though. Love you, Maura." The tone was affectionate, but detached. Not long after, she called about renting a condominium at the Bartlett, New Hampshire resort her family had vacationed at before. The call lasted just 3 minutes. The condo owner declined to rent. At 1:13 p.m., she made another call, this time to a fellow nursing student. No one knows why. On that same afternoon at 1:24 p.m., Murray sent an email to a work supervisor from the nursing school. In it, she wrote that she'd be out of town for a week because of a death in her family. But, according to her own relatives, no such death had occurred. She ended the email by saying she would contact them when she returned. At 2:05 p.m., she phoned an information line about booking hotels in Stowe, Vermont. That call lasted 5 minutes. At 2:18 p.m., she left a voicemail for her boyfriend, a short promise that they would talk later. The call lasted barely a minute. That day, Maura quietly packed her car, clothing, toiletries, college textbooks, birth control pills. When police searched her dorm later, they found most of her belongings neatly boxed and the artwork stripped from her walls. It's unclear if she packed them that day or earlier, but investigators believed she did so between Sunday night and Monday morning. On top of the boxes lay a printed email to her boyfriend, hinting at possible trouble in their relationship. At 3:30 p.m., Maura drove away from campus in her black 1996 Saturn sedan. That same day, UMass Amherst had canceled classes due to a snowstorm. 10 minutes later, at 3:40 p.m., she stopped at an ATM. She withdrew $280 in cash. Cameras caught her alone. She then went to a nearby liquor store and purchased nearly $40 worth of alcohol: Bailey's Irish Cream, Kahlua, vodka, and a box of Francia wine. Again, footage confirmed she was alone. At some point, she also picked up the accident report forms she needed from the Registry of Motor Vehicles. Between 4 and 5 p.m., Maura left Amherst, most likely heading north on Interstate 91. At 4:37 p.m., she called her voicemail. It was the last recorded use of her cell phone. From that moment on, there is no proof she told anyone where she was going, and no evidence she ever had a destination. 7:27 p.m. Report of car accident. Sometime after 7 p.m., in the quiet town of Woodsville, New Hampshire, a resident heard a loud thump outside her house. She looked out her window and saw a car lodged into a snowbank on a sharp corner of Route 112, also known as Wild Ammonoosuc Road. The vehicle was pointed west, but sat on the eastbound side of the road. She called the Grafton County Sheriff's Department at 7:27 p.m. to report the accident. At first, she told dispatch she thought she saw a man smoking inside the car. Later, she changed her account, saying it wasn't a cigarette at all, but a red glow, likely from a cell phone light. Moments later, a passing motorist, a school bus driver who lived nearby, pulled over. He saw the car. He saw a young woman walking around it. She wasn't bleeding. She wasn't visibly injured, but she was shivering, cold, unsettled. The bus driver offered to call for help, but the woman refused. Some reports say she even pleaded with him not to call police. She insisted she had already contacted AAA, but records would later prove AAA never received such a call, and there was no cell reception in the area. The bus driver drove home and phoned police himself. His call came in at 7:43 p.m. As he dialed, he noticed several other cars passing along the road. Meanwhile, another local woman claimed she drove past the crash scene at 7:37 p.m. She reported seeing a police SUV nose-to-nose with Maura's Saturn, but no officer or driver outside either vehicle. This testimony directly contradicted the official police log, which claimed officers didn't arrive until 9 minutes later. 7:46 p.m. Police arrival at scene. According to the official report, at 7:46 p.m., a Haverhill officer reached the site. By then, the driver was gone. No one was inside, and no one was nearby. The Saturn had hit a tree on the driver's side, destroying the left headlight and damaging the radiator. The windshield was cracked, both airbags deployed, and the car was locked. Inside and outside the vehicle, the officer noticed red stains, consistent with spilled wine. There was an empty beer bottle, a crushed box of Franzia wine. Other items were still inside: AAA card, blank accident forms, gloves, CDS, makeup, jewelry, printed driving directions to Burlington, her favorite stuffed animal, and a book titled Not Without Peril, about climbing in the White Mountains. Missing were her debit card, her credit cards, her phone. None have been seen or used since, and some of the alcohol she purchased earlier was gone. Journalist Joe McGee later summarized it in stark detail. At a hairpin turn, she went off the road. Her car hit a tree. A neighbor driving a bus stopped and asked if she needed help. She refused. 10 minutes later, police arrived, and Maura Murray was gone. Police quickly traced the Saturn back to Maura. At first, they leaned toward the idea that she had vanished on purpose, perhaps to escape. Her sudden travel plans, her lack of explanation to friends and family, and the absence of a struggle all seemed to suggest it. But as the hours dragged on, that theory began to crumble. And what was once a missing persons case was reclassified in 2009 as something darker. To this day, Maura Murray's disappearance is officially treated as suspicious. 8 o'clock to 9:30 p.m. Alleged sighting between 8 o'clock and 8:30 p.m. A contractor returning home from Franconia thought he saw something unusual. A lone figure, moving quickly on foot, headed eastbound along Route 112. The person wore jeans, a dark coat, and a light-colored hood. He didn't report the sighting until months later, when he realized the date matched the night Maura disappeared. Meanwhile, police and the bus driver searched the area. By 8 p.m., fire trucks and EMS had arrived to secure the scene. At 8:49 p.m., Maura's Saturn was towed away. By 9:30 p.m., the responding officer cleared the site. Not long after, investigators found a rag stuffed into the Saturn's muffler pipe, believed to be part of her roadside emergency kit. Why it was there remains a mystery. The next day, nearly 24 hours after she was last seen, Maura Murray was officially declared missing. Initial investigation, 2004 to 2005. February to June, 2004. At 12:36 p.m. on February 10th, a Be on the Lookout bulletin went out for Maura Murray. The description was strong. Dark coat, jeans, black backpack. At 3:20 p.m., a voicemail landed on Fred Murray's home machine. The message said his daughter's car had been found abandoned, but Fred was out of state. He never heard it. By 5 p.m., one of Maura's older sisters finally reached him with the news. Fred called Haverhill police immediately. They told him if Maura wasn't safe by morning, Fish and Game would start a search. At 5:17 p.m., for the very first time, police officially called Maura, what she now remains to this day, missing. Before dawn on February 11th, Fred arrived in Haverhill. At 8 a.m., the search began. Family, policy, Fish and Game, volunteers. A tracking dog picked up Maura's scent from one of her gloves, moving east along Route 112 for 100 yards. Then, the trail ends. Gone. Police quietly suggested what that meant. Maura may have left in another car. At 5 p.m., Maura's boyfriend and his parents reached Haverhill. He was interrogated alone, then again with his parents. By 7 p.m., police floated their first theory. Maura had either run away or come here to end her life. Her family flatly rejected both. That same night, Maura's boyfriend received a voicemail he believed contained the sound of Maura sobbing. The call traced back to a Red Cross calling card, another chilling thread with no end. On February 12th, Fred and Maura's boyfriend held a press conference in Bethlehem. The next day, the case hit the papers. By 3:05 p.m., police issued another notice. Maura might be headed to the Kansamagas Highway. She was now listed as endangered and possibly suicidal. They even suggested she had been intoxicated at the crash site, but the bus driver who had spoken with her that night swore she didn't seem drunk at all. A week after she disappeared, Fred and the boyfriend appeared on CNN's American Morning. The family expanded the search into Vermont, furious that authorities there hadn't been notified. 10 days in, the FBI joined the case. Relatives in Massachusetts were interviewed. Haverhill police declared the search nationwide. Another round of ground and air sweeps followed. Helicopters with thermal imaging, dogs trained to track the living and the dead. On February 26th, Maura's sister stumbled across a ripped pair of women's underwear in the snow. DNA ruled it out. It wasn't Maura's. By the end of the month, police returned the contents of Maura's car to her family. On March 2nd, exhausted and drained, they left their motel. But Fred came back. Every weekend, searching, hoping. In April, police warned him about trespassing complaints. And then, another young woman disappeared. Brianna Maitland, 66 miles away in Vermont. The similarities drew immediate comparisons, but authorities insisted the cases weren't connected. By June, both states issued a joint press release. There was no evidence of foul play. No serial killers. Their theory? Maura was headed to an unknown destination and probably accepted a ride to get there. July 2004, December 2005. On July 1st, investigators quietly took back the items from Maura's car for forensic testing. 12 days later, nearly 100 searchers combed a 1-mile radius around the crash site. It was the fourth search, and the first without snow. The item they wanted most, the black backpack Maura was said to have with her, was never found. Late that year, a strange tip emerged. A man gave Fred a rusty, stained knife. He claimed it belonged to his brother, who lived less than a mile from the crash site. The brother, he said, had been acting oddly since Maura disappeared. He even claimed he believed the knife had been used to kill her. Days later, that same brother apparently scrapped his Volvo. But other relatives said the tipster was lying for reward money. He had his own history with drugs. Another lead evaporated. In 2005, Fred took Maura's case all the way to the governor of New Hampshire. He even appeared on the Montel Williams show to plead for help. On February 9th, the one-year anniversary of Maura's disappearance, a small service was held at the crash site. Fred met briefly with the new governor, John Lynch. By the end of that year, Fred filed suit against several law enforcement agencies, desperate to see the files on his daughter's case. Then came another bizarre tip. On November 1st, a user named Tom Davies logged into an online forum and claimed he had seen a black backpack, like Maura's, hidden behind a restroom at Pemigewasset Overlook, 30 miles east of the crash site. The Attorney General's office confirmed law enforcement was aware of the backpack. But whether it was ever tested, no one will say. Subsequent searches, 2006 to 2010. In 2006, a new team joined the hunt, the New Hampshire League of Investigators, 10 retired detectives alongside the Molly Bish Foundation. Former Police Chief Tom Shamshak summed it up grimly. This looks like more than just a missing persons case. Something ominous could have happened here. In 2007, the nonprofit Let's Bring Them Home offered a $75,000 reward. That October, volunteers scoured the woods again. In a nearby A-frame house, just 1 mile from the crash site, cadaver dogs went wild in a closet, signaling the possible presence of human remains. The house had once belonged to the same man tied to the knife tip. A carpet sample was taken. The results were never made public. In July 2008, another 2-day search swept the woods of Haverhill, with the dog teams and private investigators. Still nothing. By 2009, Maura's case was at the center of calls to create a cold case unit in New Hampshire. That year, the unit was formed, and its case was added. In 2010, Fred openly criticized investigators for treating the disappearance as just a missing persons case. He demanded the FBI step in. The state's response was cautious, but chilling. We don't know if Maura is a victim, but we're treating it as a potential homicide. Further developments 2011 to present. By 2014, 10 years had passed. Prosecutors admitted no credible sightings of Maura had ever surfaced since the night she disappeared. Fred told the press he believed his daughter had been abducted and killed. In 2017, on the 13th anniversary, investigators repeated, "The case is still open, active at times, dormant at others, but no updates to share." In 2019, Fred again declared his belief that Maura was dead. He pushed for another search of the A-frame house. That April, new owners allowed the basement to be excavated. The result? Nothing but a shard of pottery and old pipes. In 2021, the tree at the crash site, marked for years with a blue ribbon, was cut down by the property owner. The family's request for a historical marker there was denied. That September, small bone fragments were discovered on Loon Mountain, 25 miles from the crash site. Maura had known the mountain. For weeks, hope flickered. By November, the fragments were ruled out. They weren't hers. In 2022, FBI issued a national alert and created a VICAP profile. That summer, New Hampshire police searched new areas in Landaff and Easton, and in February 2024, 20 years after her disappearance, an age-progressed photo of Maura was released. A haunting reminder. If she's still alive, would we even recognize her now? 20 years have passed since Maura Murray disappeared on that cold February night. Her car was found. Her belongings were scattered. But Maura herself was never seen again. Was she took by someone she knew? Did she step willingly into another car, chasing an escape only she understood? Or did the White Mountains of New Hampshire swallow her secrets forever? The truth lies buried in silence. And until it's uncovered, Maura's name will remain one of the most haunting echoes in true crime history. This is Audioman Dark Stories, where the shadows speak and every silence hides a truth. If you are drawn into Maura's story, don't let her memory fade. Hit like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more mysteries that still defy answers. And remember, every click, every share keeps these stories alive, because sometimes keeping the question alive is the only way we ever get close to the answer.